Hi there, and welcome back to another episode of Paint with Sean. So, we are going to, excuse me, we are going to try to finish this painting today. So, this is our step-by-step painting, and you can go back and watch the entire series. There's a full playlist of every video, as well as you can just watch them individually if there's a piece you want to learn about. But we showed you how to do the clouds individually, and the sky individually, and the mountains, and the trees and rocks, and every piece of this. So go ahead and jump back into that. Watch those at your own pace. But today we're going to work on close-up trees. So we did some sort of distant trees and some that are a little bit farther away and not as detailed. So today we are going to focus on building trees that are a little bit closer. So they will come down to the bottom of the page, which will actually indicate that they are closer, as well as they will be larger and a little more detailed. So, excuse me. So today we're going to start with just our standard brush here. So we can use this one for all kinds of stuff. Actually, I'm going to switch to a little bit bigger brush just so we can cover some ground today. So I'm just going to use, it really doesn't matter. We're just going to kind of make some same shapes. But we want to have a fairly large structure, and we always want to start with the darkest color. We want to start in the back, work our way forwards with the details. So the dark color is where the shadow is going to be, and then we just put some highlight detail colors on there to show the texture and the depth and that kind of thing. So we're going to do sort of a structural tree like this one, as well as another one that doesn't have the branches, just so you can see two different takes on trees. So I'm going to start with a fairly dark color. I've got black, brown, yellow, white, and green on my board over here, so we can make some cool dark looking colors here. So I'm going to get a good amount of black, some green in here to kind of take some of that tone out of the brown, or out of the black, excuse me, and then I'm going to put a bunch of brown in here. So I want this to be a real dark color. So I might need a little more black in there, really tone that down. Get my green in there. And I want this fairly dark, okay, because it's going to be really close up. So we really want to emphasize that this has some deep shadow areas. So I'm actually taking a lot of black into this. Okay, so we want this a real dark chocolate brown. We don't want it to be black, then it won't look like an actual tree. We still want it to have that brown tone to it, but very dark chocolate. Okay. So mixing, again, big piece of this whole tree thing. So here's what Bob Ross would call your bravery test. This is where you're going to cover up some things that you've put a lot of time and effort into building and creating within your little world here. So I've been sort of debating back and forth as to where I want to put this tree. And so it's not that I'm afraid to do the tree. I just want to make sure that the end product shows the pieces that I really want it to show. So we've got this little trail over here, and I want the tree on this side so that it can come fairly close to us, and it's going to come down to the bottom here. So we may end up covering up some part of this bush right here, but I believe I want it about here so we can still see the trail on one side of the tree, and then it will continue on the other side of the tree. Again, that's what creates depths, is that overlap of layers. Okay, so I want the base of the tree to be about right here. And we want this to be a nice, tall tree. Okay, so I really want to come up fairly tall with this thing and cover up a decent part of this, okay? So I've got this mixture in here, and I just want to try to flatten out my tip as much as possible, okay? So again, this is not the finest brush, so at the top, if I need to come back with a little bit more detail, I totally can. But I'm just going to try and flatten this out as best I can, and then we'll come up here, okay? So I just want to kind of eyeball this. We're going to start at the top, nice light touch, and then this is going to swoop down, and we're going to push harder as we get to the bottom. Okay, and again, if you don't have enough paint to do the whole stroke, that's okay. But you want this to get thicker as you come down. Very important right there. Okay, so I'm just going to load up some more paint here and kind of give this a little bit of a wiggle. Okay, trees are never straight down. They don't really have that kind of structure to them. Okay, so down here at the bottom, I'm just going to put this just a little bit in front of this bush here. Okay, maybe it's going to come down a little bit like that. Okay, I'm just going to put a little texture on the side here. So again, guys, doesn't have to be perfect. Trees are not perfect. Okay, I just want a little more of a pointy top to it, so I'm going to put a nice little point to it. Okay, make sure you got enough on there that you can kind of give your tree a little bit of wiggle to it, and it can kind of go left and right and whatever it may be. Okay, so I just want to have a nice crisp edge. That's the very important part. So very important that the edges are nice and clean. Nice and sharp edges, even if they're not completely perfectly straight. Maybe we got a little foot that comes out there. We don't want them to be rough or blotchy at all. Okay, so the close-up stuff has very hard lines to it. Okay, and we can pull out this smaller brush, or even one of these other ones that has sort of a finer tip to it, and I'm just going to roll it in my paint color and sort of make it like a tip at the end. Okay, so if you want to use another brush to really make yourself a nice pointy tip, that's okay. Okay, so we've got our base structure on here for the most part. Again, I'm just going to make sure these edges are nice and crisp for me. That's what I really want to look for in this. Okay, so I'm just going to put using the wrong brush here. I'm trying to do detail work with a bigger brush. Okay, so you can make this as tall as you want. The tip really needs to be thinner than the rest. Okay, and be careful widening too much. You can really get carried away trying to put these little edges out here and all the things. Okay. All right, so we got a little shape to our tree. I like that. So this is the one that is going to have the left and right movement similar to this one. Okay, so this is where we want to come in with our fan brush. So this is just a way to show you how to do the trunk. But again, it covers a lot of area. We've got a real nice crisp solid line. So now I've got my fan brush here, and I don't think I'm going to have enough color, so I'm going to pull some more black, a little bit of this brown over here, just to give myself a little more to work with. But I think I shorted myself on paint, so we may need to come back in with some paint. Okay, so at the very top, I just want to use the corner of this, and we're just going to make the little indications. Okay, so just little bits, and we're just going to come sort of back and forth, and then as we get down here a little bit, we can kind of change the brush itself. Okay, and they just kind of zigzag back and forth. Now, if it looks too perfect, we can come back in and adjust that a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to try and get some more paint here. And we can put a little bit more pressure in it as we come down. Okay. And I'm going to have to mix up some more paint, so let's do that. And we did make a very large trunk on this tree, which is okay. Trees are kind of weird in how they grow. Sometimes they got real thick trunks and stuff, so we're going to put fairly wide branches on this because of the width of the trunk itself. Okay, so I got a little bit more on my brush here. I'm just sort of coming back and forth here, and just as I get down to the bottom here, Again, I want to sort of make these a little bit wider as we come down, and let the brush bend and take that texture. Okay, so we don't necessarily want to cover up everything, but we do want it to get, the branches do get pretty bushy at the bottom. Okay. Okay. So we've got a good little structure there. Again, we can sort of break up some of this trunk line, give ourselves a few more indications of some things going on in here and whatnot. So you can see the trunk a little bit too much. You can cover it up just a little bit, tapping in here and there with some extra branches. Okay. So again, just to sort of break up the perfectness of this forward and back. Okay, it's not an exact science. Trees are cool like that. Okay, so again, I want to be able to see through, though. I don't want to cover up all this stuff because that's what allows you to really see the world behind it. All right, so we want to give just some indications of some things. Okay, just little bits. All right, so we got our nice big tree here. Hopefully you guys have relaxed the nerves a little bit because we covered up a lot. Okay, we did a lot of detail work and a lot of things going on just to cover it up. So sometimes that's how it works. You really got to put in some of these extra pieces just to allow it to take the shape, and you know that the world is behind it. Okay, so don't get stressed or upset if there was a part that you covered up that was really good and oh, that just ruined it or whatever. This is what takes your painting to the next level, because when you have the faraway stuff, it's okay. When you bring this to the foreground, man, that's when things really start to stand out for you. Okay, so I've got this same muddy color here. I want to come in with some green. Now, because our light source sort of over here is kind of on the background, I don't want this to be very bright on this side of it. Okay, so I want it to be as though the light is on the other side. So we're only going to have some of this have some lighter color. Okay, so I'm going to pull into my green over here and mix it with this darker color that I had, and I want this to kind of dry a little bit. All right, I don't want to blend this much. I really want it to be kind of individual colors over here. But again, keeping this nice and dark is going to be a very big part of this. Okay, so when we start with this, the top will always be lighter. It has the ability to reach up to the sky and grab the color, grab that lightness a little bit more, where as we come down to the bottom, this is going to stay a little bit darker. We're not going to be able to see quite as much. Okay, so I'm gonna get a fairly good brightish type color here. Okay, and I'm just going to tap in a little bit. And this little tap also creates sort of a texture. Okay, and as you come down, this will get lighter and lighter. And we don't want to eliminate all the dark areas, okay? But we want to cover up some of them so it looks as though there's some things going on, okay? We want to give that differentiation. Very important, okay? Okay, very good. Okay, so we can start to see a little bit of dimension in this. Now, I've got this color over here. I've got a good bit on my brush. I'm going to pull some green over to the side and lighten this up, and just a tad bit of white. I really want to drop the value in this, okay? Really just want to drop the value in this color, but stay in sort of the same range, all right? So let me pull my brushes over here. So this is not too much lighter than what I just used, just a tad, okay? But I really want this to be something that we can put some pops on some of this. Okay, Just little bits here and there. And the harder you push on this, the more will come off. But this is what starts to build some depth and some layers within it so that you can kind of see, oh, there's a light point. I can really see that little branch piece right there, okay? And as you come down, get lighter and lighter with your touch, okay? And a little bit more sparing. We want this to be darker as we come down, okay? So we've got a real good structure for our tree. Again, we want this to really remain dark. We don't want this to brighten up on us because we're sort of looking through the tree to get to the actual light. Okay, so you can see these are very dark and light combinations in here, just little bits here and there that allow you to see those branches. And again, put some in the middle, right over the top of these trunk areas. Okay, because you don't have branches just on the sides. They go all the way around the tree. So it's very important that you show some of those indications that it's crossing that border. Okay, so I'm just tapping in here and there and putting a little pieces that maybe look like some things going on. Okay, so again, the angles, the little bushy branches that are going on, all of this is very important for us. So maybe we want to have a little bit of a highlight on our tips. Okay, so I like that. I want to put a little bit of bark in this. All right, so I'm gonna wash my brush off a little bit just to kind of get some of this paint off. Okay, and then we're gonna come into our brown and black combination. Okay, so I'm going to pull some of this aside that has a little more of the brown to it. So I still, again, want this to be fairly dark, but I want this to be a little lighter and in the brown value. Okay, and we're going to put a little bit of texture. So a downward stroke, not perfect, okay? So we're going to kind of tap and twist. Okay, so as we come down in here, just going to tap and twist. And again, I'm just starting with the indication of a little bit of change in color. I missed my tree there. Okay, so this is still not too light. We're just adding some texture pieces here. All right. And then I'm going to grab just a touch of the white, come into that same color I've been using. Okay, and it gets light very, very quickly. Just a touch of white, and it brings it down to just a completely different color. Okay, so here I just want to add a few more little texture pieces vertically. Okay, and I really, really like the fan brush for this because it creates bumps and different texture pieces. Okay, so it kind of gives that indication that there's some ups and downs going on. Okay, so again, grabbing just another little touch of that white, bring it on over here, and we're just going to put layer after layer of these little indications of color. Okay, so I want to have one side be a little bit lighter than the other, so I'm going to start on this side. Okay, we're going to have just some little indications of some things. All right. And you can do this with a lot of different brushes. The big trick is to have some of it have lines and some of it not have lines. Okay, so if you really get this down to a fine point, you really get a good amount of paint on there. You can get your fan brush to really paint you like an actual solid line. Okay, I don't want too much of the lines. It's really easy to get overdone. All right, but giving these little indications of direction. Okay, very, very important. We just want to give those indications. All right. So now I've got my sort of little bit of texture going on. I'm going to go one more time into the white. And again, this is going to be a fairly light color comparatively. And I just want to add a couple. All right, again, we're just varying in that value. So I really want to have this lighten up a little bit. Just a couple, there we go. A few little pops here and there. Okay. We're just going to vary the angle that we touch this at. Just maybe have a little bit more on this side. Maybe the top of this little branch over here's got a highlight. Okay. I'm just going to leave that left side a little darker than the right side. Okay. So this gives us some indication of some kind of messy bark in there. All right. Now we've got our brush pretty messy here, so I'm going to take this off, and then I'm just going to put a little bit of dark back in just for a few little areas. And again, guys, this will always dry darker, okay? So these little highlight areas that we have on our trees, those are going to be very dark. You're really going to see sort of that trunk show through and some of those pieces that are in there. But I wanted to have a really dark area that, again, indicates that the light isn't showing over on this side. And if you want to, you know, play around, you can always leave the tree fairly dark and just highlight the tips of one side. Really kind of the tops maybe where some of that light would show. Okay, so just for the sake of speed in the video, we're gonna leave the tree pretty well where it is, and I'm just gonna accentuate some of these darker areas. So I've still got some of that same dark color we mixed up before. Okay, and I just want to throw in some little dark accentuations just to give it a little more depth to it. Okay, so some of these little dark areas really make it stand out and pop on those lighter areas. Okay, make this backside just kind of darken up a little bit. Okay, so just a little bit there, and on down here on the bottom is all good. Okay, so lighten that a little. All right, so we got a little tree line going on here. We've got some bark on our tree. All right, so now let's do one more tree that doesn't have any foliage on it, okay? Because some of this stuff, it can kind of be repetitive if you're doing every tree the exact same way. And a lot of times trees are not pine trees. They don't all grow the same way. So let's go out and put a little bit of water on our brush, okay? So when we put water on our brush, this allows us to thin the paint. All right, and I'm using just this same real dark blackish brown color that we had before. All right, and you can use any thickness of brush that you want. So I've got some that are a little more fine tipped kind of thing, so I might jump into that if this doesn't go how I want. But I do want to put one more tree in here that is a little bit farther away. So again, the higher up that the base of the tree is, the farther away it will look. All right. So I know we've got our we've got our waterfall here, and it's looking really good. And sometimes we don't want to cover that stuff up, but again, having something on the back side of it makes it look farther away. Okay. So we're gonna get this rolled around. We've got a nice fine point to this. And again, I'm just going to do the same kind of thing, but we're going to do it with a few extra branches and no real leaves on it, okay? So I just want to start about right here. Nice light touch here as we get started. Okay, and I need way more paint already out of the gate, drying out instantly. Very important that you have enough paint on there. We don't want holes to show through. Okay, so very, very light touch. Okay, and I want to keep this fairly thin. Okay, so I don't want this to get too thick too fast. And I think I'm going to use a different brush because this one is not doing what I want it to do. This one, here we go. Okay, so I'm going to get in some water here, really just kind of thin this out as well. All right, so if you're dealing with a thick paint, sometimes it will break. All right, and you guys might not be able to see this here. So I just want to thin this out a little bit. So it will just cover nice and evenly. Okay. And again, we don't have straight trees almost ever. So we're going to have a little bit of variation, and maybe this trunk hides down here behind it. Okay, so I'm going to keep reloading, get myself a good amount of paint to work with. And this is thin, almost like ink. All right, it's real thin. Now again, if you don't have enough on there, it may look like it's showing through, because it can be thin enough to let the paint behind it show through. So you want to make sure you got a good amount on there. Okay, so this kind of tapers off a little faster than I wanted, so let's come up here. Let's go nice and thin, just a little more pressure. Okay, so we can make this as tall or as short as we really want it to be. Okay, grab a little more water here, thinning out my paint real well. So now we're going to go on to some of the arms. Okay, let's just strengthen up this little bit right there. Looks a little skinny on the bottom. Shit, we don't want it to fall over. Okay. All right, so now again, we're just going to throw a couple little arms on there. The more wiggly you are, the better. And they usually don't come out at the same place. So don't put one here and then one that connects right at the same spot. Very rarely do trees grow like that, unless they grow like that all the way up. But a lot of the trees that grow in this sort of realm, the branches are kind of uneven. Again, we had that sort of zigzag pattern because it will put out one here, and then the next one will come out a little bit higher, and the next one will come out a little bit higher, so they kind of alternate in that sense. So this may not necessarily be a pine tree, but that's typically how trees grow. They have a little alternation to them. Okay, so again, we want this nice and thin, we don't have to push too hard. Just come back and get a little more of my ink type color going on. Okay, we're just going to add a couple little branches here and a little texture going on to it. Okay, and the connection point is always going to be thicker than the tips. So you never want it to be, you know, really thick out here and then just barely thin touching on the inside where it comes into contact. That's always going to be the thickest part of your tree, is where it connects. Okay, so we're just going to add a little crazy little bush limb going on over here. Okay, and these little detail pieces, guys, are so fun. This is really what takes your paintings to the next level. Okay, so don't worry about covering stuff up. This is where we really finish and put them into something that people appreciate the efforts that went into them. Okay, so again, just a little drags here and there, and these connection points are going to vary, and the number of limbs on each tree is going to be a little bit different. Okay, so we're just going to have our little limbs stretching out over here. Have a few here and there. Okay, so we don't want to get too crazy on this. I'm just gonna put a few here and there to sort of indicate that this tree's got a little bit of life in it. Maybe it's not growing any new ones anymore, but it's still standing up nice and strong, and it's had a good life out here. Okay. All right. Let's just give ourselves a nice little one up here at the top. It's really the one that was kind of the last one to grow. Sort of sad when that happens. You never expect a tree to stop growing, but they also have lifespans. They don't live forever. And it's sort of sad that it's that way, but that's kind of how it works. I need to get a little more water over here and thin my paint out. Keep it as thin as you can, guys. These little details where they are just ultra thin, those are the things that give it those kind of amazing looks to it. Okay, where that detail is because it's so close to us, right? And again, maybe I just want this base to come out just a tad so it doesn't look like quite just a telephone pole. Those are real hard to find in nature. Okay, so we've got a few little limbs on here, but we're just about finished with this painting, guys, and that's, again, one of the toughest things is to walk away from it and say, yep, that's enough, I'm finished. Okay, we always want to add kind of a couple little more things and do our little extras and put the pieces out there and really, just continue to work, and boy, you can do that forever. So excuse me, I'm struggling with my cough today. But I really enjoy how this one has come out here so far, so we're going to finish this up real quick. I'm going to come into some straight white, okay? And again, I'm using the same dirty brush here, and the light is coming from this side. So we just want to highlight this a little bit, all right? So at the top, I just want to have a little bit of highlights here. And we're just going to come down this right side and highlight just a bit. Okay, and it gets lighter and lighter as it comes down to the bottom. Okay, so again, this will also give us a little bit of variation. Okay, it won't look like exactly a flat white tree. Okay, I'm gonna get a little bit more sort of a in-between color. We'll get some real white on here, and we're gonna give it a little pop. Okay, and again, because we're coming right up next to this other white tree over here, white water, that color isn't gonna show as well if we go pure white. Okay, so we just want to have some little white pieces in here and there and show that it's got some highlight to it. Okay, so again, I appreciate you guys coming along the journey with me on this painting. This one's been really quite a fun project. I've had so much fun showing you guys all the little individual pieces, okay, and how you can arrange them in different ways to do each part. So it's really up to you and your imagination in what you want a painting to look like and where you want the pieces to go and what's the story that you're telling yourself as you come around the world that this painting exists in. So we're going to go ahead and call this one a finished painting. I appreciate your guys' time following along with me. If you've enjoyed this and you want to see more paintings in the future, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you guys in the next video.